Troubled Aliens Summoned Humanity's Fleet Part 1. The sky above Sanctuary Prime burned with the light of enemy ships. Elder Coordinator stood at the window of the Great Council Hall and watched the Dominion fleet circle his world like hungry predators. There were 40 warships up there, 40 instruments of death waiting to fall upon his people. His thin fingers trembled as he counted them again. 40. The number had not changed since morning. It would not change no matter how many times he counted. Behind him, the council chamber filled with frightened voices. The other coordinators had gathered in response to his emergency summons. They spoke over each other in high, panicked tones. Their pale blue skin had turned almost white with fear. Their large eyes darted around the room, seeking comfort that did not exist. Turned away from the window, he raised one slender hand and the room fell silent. They respected their elder. They trusted him to guide them through this darkness, but had no guidance to offer. He had only fear. "They have given us 3 solar cycles," he said. His voice was calm, though his heart beat rapidly inside his chest. "In 3 cycles, they demand our complete surrender. Our people will become slaves. Our world will become theirs." A young coordinator named stepped forward. She was small even by standards, but her eyes held a fire that the others had lost. "We must fight back," she said. "With what?" another coordinator asked. "We have no weapons, we have no warships. We are not warriors, we are scholars and gardeners and artists." "Then we will die as scholars and gardeners and artists," replied. "I would rather die free than live as a slave." Admired her courage, but courage alone could not stop plasma cannons. They had evolved on a gentle world. Their bodies were fragile. Their bones were thin. They breathed air so pure that even mild pollution made them sick. They had never needed to fight because their world had never given them enemies. Until the came. "There may be another way," said a voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at Keeper. She was the oldest among them, the guardian of their historical records. She walked slowly to the center of the room, her movements careful and measured. "Long ago," began, "when our ancestors first reached the stars, they discovered they were not alone. The galaxy was full of life. Most species were like us, gentle, peaceful, civilized." "We know this history," someone said impatiently. Raised her hand for silence. But there were other species that evolved on worlds of fire and poison, worlds where gravity crushed bones and weather killed without warning, worlds where every creature was either a predator or prey. She paused. The room had grown very quiet. These species were called, and the most dangerous of all were the humans. Felt a chill run through his body. He had heard stories about humans. Everyone had heard stories. They were the monsters that parents warned their children about, the nightmare creatures from a planet called Earth. "Humans cannot be real," one coordinator said nervously. "They are just legends." "They are very real," replied. "I have seen the records. Humans evolved on a world that should have killed them 1,000 times over. Their planet has crushing gravity. Their atmosphere is filled with a corrosive gas they call oxygen. Their world experiences violent storms, extreme temperatures, and constant geological activity. And yet humans not only survived, they thrived." Stepped closer to, "What are you suggesting, Keeper?" Reached into her robes and pulled out a small device. It was ancient, covered in dust, but lights still blinked on its surface. "This is an emergency beacon. It was given to our ancestors by a human delegation 200 years ago. They said if we ever faced extinction, we could use it to call for help." The council erupted in shouting. Coordinators argued and gestured wildly. Some demanded that throw the device away. Others begged her to activate it immediately. Walked to and took the beacon from her hands. He studied it carefully. Such a small thing, such a dangerous thing. "The records describe what humans look like," he said quietly. "They are massive. Their muscles are dense. Their teeth are designed for tearing meat. They can run for hours without stopping. They can survive injuries that would kill any of us instantly. They heal from wounds that should be permanent. They sound worse than someone whispered. Perhaps they are, agreed, but they have already promised to enslave us. The humans have promised nothing except help. He looked at the beacon in his hands. 200 years it had sat unused. 200 years the humans had waited for a call that never came. If we summon them, said slowly, we might be trading one master for another. Or we might find allies, replied. The records say humans have a strange quality. They form attachments to other species. They protect creatures weaker than themselves. No one understands why. Closed his eyes, he thought of his people. He thought of the children playing in the garden districts. He thought of the artists painting in their studios. He thought of the scholars studying in their libraries. All of them would be slaves in 3 cycles, or worse. He opened his eyes and pressed the activation button on the beacon. The device hummed. A bright light pulsed from its center. Then it sent its signal out into the darkness of space, traveling faster than light, seeking the who had left it behind so long ago. The council watched in terrified silence. What had they done? What had they invited into their lives? For 1 hour nothing happened, then 2 hours, then 3. Some coordinators began to hope that the beacon had failed. Perhaps the humans had forgotten about them. Perhaps the humans were extinct. Then's communication device crackled with static. A voice came through. It was deep and strong and utterly alien. This is Captain Park of the HSS Ironclad. We received your distress call. Identify yourselves. His hands shook so badly she almost dropped the device. She looked at. He nodded slowly. This is Navigator of the colony on Sanctuary Prime, she said. We are facing invasion. We have no defenses. We need help. There was a pause. When the human spoke again, her voice had changed. It was softer now, gentler. We understand, Captain said. Hold on, Sanctuary Prime. Help is coming. The communication ended. The council stood frozen in place. Outside the window, the fleet continued its patient circle around their world. But somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something far more dangerous was now heading their way. Looked at his people. Their faces showed a mixture of hope and terror. They had called there was no taking it back now. All they could do was wait and pray that humans were as merciful as the old records claimed. Troubled Aliens Summoned Humanity's Fleet Part 2. Captain Park stood on the command deck of the HSS Ironclad and read the distress signal for the 3rd time. The words were simple. A species called the faced invasion. They had no weapons. They had no way to defend themselves. They were going to be enslaved or killed. Was a small woman by human standards, but she carried herself like someone much larger. Her black hair was tied back in a tight bun. Her dark eyes scanned the data on her screen with sharp focus. She had been a captain for 12 years. She had seen many things in those years, but she had never responded to an emergency beacon before. How old is this beacon signal? She asked. Ensign looked up from his communication station. He was young, barely 25, with a round face and quick fingers. The beacon itself is over 200 years old, Captain, but the signal was sent less than 4 hours ago. 200 years, murmured. They waited 200 years to ask for help. They must be truly desperate, said Lieutenant. He was her tactical officer, a tall man with broad shoulders and a mind built for warfare. They are classified as a Category 1 species. Fragile, peaceful, no military capability whatsoever. And who is attacking them? Pulled up the data on the main screen. The Dominion, Category 4 species, aggressive, militaristic. They have conquered 11 worlds in the past 50 years. Their fleet at Sanctuary Prime numbers approximately 40 warships. Studied the numbers, 40 enemy ships. She had 7. The math was not in her favor. How long until we can reach them? She asked. If we push the engines to maximum, 18 hours, replied. Nodded slowly. 18 hours was a long time. A lot could happen in 18 hours. But the had said they had 3 cycles before the deadline. There was still time. Alert the fleet, she ordered. All ships prepare for emergency jump. We are going to Sanctuary Prime. Stepped closer to her. He spoke quietly so the others would not hear. Captain, the odds are not good. 40 ships against 7. Even for us, that is a difficult fight. I know, said. Many of our people could die. I know that too. Studied her face, and you still want to go. Turned to look at him. Her eyes were calm but determined. 200 years ago, we promised those people that if they ever needed help, we would come. They called. What kind of species would we be if we ignored them? Was silent for a moment, then he smiled slightly. A safer one. But not a better one, replied. Prepare the fleet. 18 hours later, the fleet emerged from hyperspace above Sanctuary Prime. 7 human warships materialized against the backdrop of stars. They were not elegant vessels. They were not beautiful. They were built for one purpose: war. The ironclad led the formation. Behind it came the Defiant, the Resolute, the Avalanche, the Tempest, and the Harbinger. Each ship bristled with weapons. Each ship carried soldiers trained to fight in conditions that would kill most species in minutes. On the planet below, they watched in stunned silence. Elder stood in the observation center with Anne. They watched the human ships take position between their world and the fleet. The human vessels looked so small compared to the warships, so fragile. They came, whispered. They actually came. 7 ships, said quietly. Only 7 ships against 40. Felt his hopes sink. 7 ships. He had expected more. He had expected a massive fleet that would sweep away the like dust in the wind, but there were only 7. His communication device activated. A holographic image appeared in the center of the observation room. It was the human captain. Took an involuntary step backward. He had read the descriptions in the old records. He had thought he was prepared. He was wrong. Captain Park stood in the hologram like a predator from ancient nightmares. Her body was thick with muscle. Her movements were smooth and controlled, like a hunting animal waiting to strike. Her eyes seemed to look right through him, seeing every weakness, every vulnerability. And yet when she spoke, her voice was gentle. Elder Coordinator, she said. I am Captain Park of the HSS Ironclad. We have come in response to your beacon. Struggled to find his voice. Captain, we are grateful, but I must be honest, I expected more ships. Smiled slightly. It was a strange expression. The record said humans showed their teeth when they were happy. It looked terrifying. I understand your concern, she said, but I promise you 7 human ships are enough. Before could respond, another signal cut into the communication. A new face appeared in the hologram. It was massive and covered in thick gray scales. Its eyes were small and cruel. Its mouth was filled with sharp teeth. Humans, the creature said, I am warlord of the Dominion. You have entered territory claimed by my people. Leave now or you will be destroyed. Turned to face the warlord. Her expression did not change. Warlord, I am Captain Park. They have requested our protection. We will not leave until they are safe. Laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. Protection? You bring 7 ships against my 40. This is not protection. This is suicide. Perhaps, agreed calmly, but it is our choice to make. Leaned closer to the camera. His eyes narrowed. I have heard stories about humans from a poisoned planet, strong, stubborn, stupid. You think you are special because your world tried to kill you. I think we are special because it failed, replied. The communication line was silent for a long moment. His expression shifted from amusement to anger. You have 1 hour to leave this system, he growled. After that, I will destroy your ships and sell your bodies to the highest bidder. Meat is valuable in certain markets. The transmission ended. Turn back to. Her expression had not changed throughout the entire exchange. She seemed completely calm, as if threats from murderous aliens were a normal part of her day. "Elder," she said, "I recommend you begin evacuating civilians from the exposed coastal regions. There may be ground fighting before this is over." Nodded numbly. "Captain, are you not afraid?" Considered the question. "Fear is useful," she said. "It keeps us sharp, but fear does not control us, we control it." She paused and looked directly into his eyes. "We came here to protect you. That is what we will do, whatever it costs." The hologram faded, stood in silence, staring at the empty air where the human had been. Outside, the fleet began to move into attack formation. The hour was passing quickly. Soon, the battle would begin. Moved to stand beside. "Do you think they can really win?" she asked. 7 ships against 40. Watched the human fleet hold its position. They did not retreat. They did not show any sign of fear. "I do not know," he admitted, "but I believe they will try until their last breath, and perhaps that is what matters." Troubled aliens summoned humanity's fleet Part 3. The hour passed quickly. When it ended, Warlord gave the order to attack. The fleet surged forward in a massive wave. 40 warships moved as one, their weapons charging, their shields glowing with power. They expected the human ships to run. Every other species ran when faced with such overwhelming force. The humans did not run. Captain stood at the center of the ironclad's command deck. Her officers moved around her with practiced efficiency. Every person knew their job. Every person was ready. She said calmly, "Execute pattern Omega." Lieutenant grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. "With pleasure, Captain." The 7 human ships broke formation and dove straight toward the fleet. They did not spread out to avoid fire. They did not try to maintain safe distance. They flew directly into the heart of the enemy formation. In the observation center on Sanctuary Prime, the watched in horror. "What are they doing?" gasped. "They are flying right at them." Elder could not answer. He could barely breathe. The humans were going to die. They were going to throw themselves against thee and be destroyed in seconds. But something strange happened. The ships began firing, but their weapons were designed for long-range combat. They expected enemies to stay far away. The humans were too close. The weapons could not track targets that moved so fast at such short range. The ironclad slipped between 2 warships and released a barrage of missiles at point-blank range. Both enemy ships exploded in balls of fire. The rammed its reinforced bow directly into the side of a cruiser. The impact should have destroyed both vessels. Instead, the pulled back and fired into the hole it had created. The ship broke apart from the inside. Keeper gripped the edge of her viewing console. "They are insane," she whispered. "They are completely insane." But she could not look away. The battle was chaos. Human ships wove through the formation like predators among prey. They took hits that would have destroyed vessels instantly. They kept fighting. Fires burned on their hulls. Sections vented atmosphere into space. They kept fighting. The Resolute lost its main engine. It spun out of control and crashed into a destroyer. Both ships were destroyed, but the Resolute's crew had already evacuated to escape pods. Those pods were recovered by the Defiant while still under fire. They had never seen anything like it. They had never imagined anything like it. "They protect each other," said in amazement. "Even in the middle of battle, they risk themselves to save their own people." On the ironclad, Captain commanded the battle with cold precision. Her ship shook with impacts. Warning alarms screamed from every direction. She ignored them all. "Status report," she ordered. His voice was strained but steady. "We have lost the Resolute. The Tempest is heavily damaged but still fighting. Enemy losses are 14 ships destroyed, 7 damaged." 14 ships. Nearly a third of the fleet was gone in less than 20 minutes. Warlord had never experienced such losses. He stood on his command ship and screamed orders at his officers. His fleet was being torn apart by 7 ships. 7. It was impossible. It was unacceptable. "Concentrate fire on the lead vessel," he roared. "Destroy that ship." Every remaining weapon turned toward the ironclad. The barrage was overwhelming. Shields failed. Hull plates buckled. Entire sections of the ship went dark as power systems overloaded. But the ironclad did not fall. Doctor worked in the medical bay with blood on her hands and determination in her eyes. Wounded crew members lay on every available surface. She moved between them with speed and skill, treating injuries that would have killed most species. A young soldier had lost his arm. She stabilized him in 3 minutes. Another had severe burns across his chest. She treated him while still giving orders to her medical team. A third had shrapnel embedded in his skull. She extracted it with steady hands while the ship shook around her. "How is your patient load?" His voice came through the intercom. "Heavy but manageable," replied. "Keep winning, Captain. I will keep them alive." On the planet's surface, Sergeant Lee led a team of ground soldiers to evacuate civilians from the coastal regions. They had begun landing troops, hopping to take hostages or cause chaos. Was there to stop them. He was a large man even by human standards. His arms were thick with muscle. His face was from a dozen battles. When he walked, the ground seemed to shake beneath him. The civilians fled in terror when they first saw him. They thought he was another monster come to hurt them, stopped and knelt down so he would seem less frightening. "It is okay," he said in a soft voice that did not match his appearance. "I am here to help. Please follow my soldiers to the shelters." A young child stood frozen in place. She was too scared to move. Tears rolled down her pale blue cheeks. Reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of candy. He held it out to her with a gentle smile. "Here," he said, "this is sweet. Do you like sweet things?" The child stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, carefully, she took the candy from his massive hand. She unwrapped it and put it in her mouth. Her eyes widened at the taste. "Good?" asked. The child nodded. "Now come with me," said. "I will keep you safe, I promise." He picked her up with one arm and carried her toward the shelter. Others followed, no longer running from him. They had seen something unexpected. They had seen gentleness in the monster. In orbit, the battle continued. The fleet was falling apart. 26 ships destroyed. The rest were damaged or retreating. Warlord could not believe what was happening. These were just 7 ships, 7 primitive vessels. How were they winning? He gave the order to retreat. The remaining ships pulled back to regroup at the edge of the system. They needed time to repair. They needed time to think. On the ironclad, the crew allowed themselves a moment of relief. They had won the first battle, but they knew this was not over. Captain looked at the damage reports. The Resolute was gone. The Tempest was barely functional. Every other ship had taken serious damage. "We cannot survive another assault like that," said quietly. "I know," replied. "We'll call for reinforcements." "I know that too." Studied her face. "What do we do, Captain?" Was silent for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned to face her crew. "We do what humans have always done," she said. "We survive, we adapt, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves." She looked out the viewport at the distant fleet. They were regrouping. They were planning their next attack. But so was she. Down on the planet, stood in the observation center and stared at the stars. The battle was over, but she could still see the fires burning in space where ships had died. "They did it," she said softly. "They actually did it." Stood beside her. The old keeper's eyes were wet with tears. "I never thought I would see such things," she said. "Such violence, such courage, such sacrifice." "They are terrifying," admitted, "but also beautiful in a strange way." Nodded slowly. Perhaps that is what makes them, not just the ability to kill, but the willingness to die for others. The two stood in silence and watched the stars. The first battle was over. But the war had only just begun. Troubled aliens summoned humanity's fleet. Part 4. Night fell over Sanctuary Prime. The twin moons rose slowly above the horizon, casting silver light across the frightened land. In the refugee shelters, thousands of huddled together and waited for news. On the ironclad, Captain received the intelligence report she had been dreading. 20 additional warships, said quietly. They will arrive in 12 hours. Studied the data on her screen. 20 more ships. Added to the survivors from the first battle, that meant they would face over 30 enemy vessels, with only 5 functional ships remaining. The math was impossible, even for humans. Lieutenant stood beside her. His face was grim. We cannot win a straight battle against those numbers, he said. Not even close. I know, replied. So what do we do? Was silent for a long moment. She thought about on the planet below. She thought about the promise she had made to Elder. She thought about what it meant to be human. We do not fight a straight battle, she said finally. We cut off the head. His eyes narrowed. The command ship. Warlord is holding his fleet together through fear and personal authority. If we destroy his command ship and kill him, they will fall into confusion. They might even fight each other over who takes control. That is a desperate plan, said. We are in a desperate situation. Considered it. The command ship was heavily defended. Getting close enough to destroy it would require sacrificing at least one vessel, maybe more. I will lead the assault, he said. Shook her head. No, I will lead it. The ironclad is our strongest ship. We have the best chance of getting through. Captain, if you die, the fleet loses its commander. If we lose this battle, the fleet dies anyway. Turned to face him. Her eyes were calm but determined. This is my decision. I will not ask others to take risks I am not willing to take myself. On the planet's surface, the long night had begun. Ground forces probed the human defenses, testing for weaknesses. Sergeant and his soldiers held the line. The refugee shelter was built into the side of a mountain. It had thick walls and strong doors, but it had never been designed to withstand a military assault, and his team were the only thing standing between the refugees and the soldiers hunting them. He positioned his soldiers at key points around the shelter entrance. They dug into defensive positions and checked their weapons. Then they waited. The first attack came at midnight. 20 enemy soldiers emerged from the darkness, their weapons firing. His team returned fire with deadly accuracy. Human soldiers did not miss. They fell back, leaving 6 bodies behind, but they would return. They always returned. Inside the shelter, they listened to the sounds of battle with terror in their hearts. They could hear the explosions. They could hear the screaming. They did not know who was winning. Keeper sat with Doctor in a small room that had been converted into a medical station. Had come down from the ironclad to help treat civilian injuries. She worked steadily, her hands never stopping, her focus never breaking. Watched the human doctor with fascination. May I ask you something? She said. Glanced up briefly. Of course. I have read our historical records about humans. They describe your world as a place of constant danger. Earthquakes, storms, predators, diseases. How did your species survive such a terrible place? Smiled slightly as she continued working. We did not just survive, we thrived, and the answer is simple. We had each other. I do not understand. Humans are social creatures, explained. We form bonds with each other. We protect our families, our friends, our communities. When disaster strikes, we do not abandon each other. We work together. We share resources. We sacrifice for those we love. Considered this. But you also wage terrible wars against each other. Your history is filled with violence. Yes, admitted. We are not perfect. We have done terrible things to each other, but we have also done wonderful things. We have built civilizations. We have created art and music and literature. We have reached the stars." She paused and looked directly at. "And when a species we have never met calls for help from the other side of the galaxy, we come." Why asked, "Why risk so much for strangers?" Thought about the question for a moment. Because we know what it feels like to be afraid. We know what it feels like to face extinction. And we know that the universe is very large and very cold. She smiled gently. We believe that kindness matters, that protection matters, that standing up for those who cannot protect themselves is what makes us worth saving. Outside the shelter, they attacked again and again. Each time, soldiers drove them back, but they were getting tired. Their ammunition was running low. Dawn was still hours away. Moved among his soldiers, checking on each one. He spoke to them in a calm, steady voice. He made sure they had water. He made sure their wounds were treated. He made sure they knew he was proud of them. The young child he had given candy to earlier had refused to leave his side. She sat in the corner of the shelter entrance, watching him with wide eyes. "You should go deeper inside," told her gently. "It is safer there." The child shook her head. "I want to stay with you." Smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Okay, but stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run, deal?" The child nodded solemnly. "Deal." On the ironclad, the crew prepared for their final mission. Engineers worked through the night to repair what they could. Pilots checked their systems over and over. Medical staff prepared for mass casualties. Ensign worked at his communications station, coordinating between the ships. Navigator had come aboard to help. She had learned quickly and proved surprisingly useful. "You should return to the surface," told her. "What happens next will be dangerous." Shook her head. "My people are on that planet. If you are willing to die for them, the least I can do is stay and help." Smiled. He had grown to respect this small, fragile alien. She had more courage than many humans he knew. "Then stay at this station," he said. "And when this is over, I will teach you how to play poker." "What is poker?" "A human game. You will probably be terrible at it." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I accept your challenge." Captain walked through the ship one final time. She spoke to every crew member she passed. She thanked them for their service. She told them she was proud of them. When she reached the command deck, Elder was waiting on the communication screen. "Captain Park," he said, his voice trembled slightly. "I have heard about your plan. You are going to attack the command ship." "Yes," confirmed. "It is a suicide mission." "It is a chance," corrected. "A small one, but the only one we have." Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "We asked you to save us," he said. "We did not ask you to die for us." Smiled gently. "You did not have to ask. This is what we do. This is who we are." She looked out the viewport at the distant stars. The reinforcements were getting closer. Dawn was approaching. "One more fight," she said softly, "for them." The ironclad's engines powered up. The other ships fell into formation behind her. The fleet turned toward the command ship. It was time. Troubled Aliens Summoned Humanity's Fleet Part 5. The final battle began at dawn. The fleet charged toward the formation in a tight wedge. The ironclad led the assault, her damaged hull still burning in places, her engines screaming with strain. Behind her came the Defiant, the Harbinger, and the barely functional Tempest. 5 ships against 30. The odds had never been worse. Warlord watched the human attack with disbelief. "They are insane," he growled. "They are throwing themselves at us again. Do they not learn?" "Sir, they are heading directly for our command ship," Subjugator reported. "They mean to destroy us." Laughed harshly. "Let them try. All ships concentrate fire on the lead vessel. I want that ship torn apart." The fleet opened fire. Plasma beams and missiles filled the space between the two forces. The human ships flew straight into the storm. On the ironclad, alarms screamed from every direction. Sections of the ship buckled under the assault. Power systems failed. Crew members were thrown from their stations by the impact. But they did not stop. "Shields at 20%, reported. His voice was strained but steady. "Maintain course," ordered. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. "Maintain course." "Captain, if we take another direct hit." "Maintain course." Lieutenant worked his tactical station with focused determination. He fired every weapon the ironclad possessed. Each shot found its target. Ships exploded around them, but more kept coming. The fell first. A concentrated barrage broke her spine, and she tumbled out of control, crashing into a cruiser. Both ships were destroyed in a massive explosion. The Tempest followed moments later. Her already damaged systems could not withstand the punishment. She broke apart in a shower of fire and debris. 3 ships left: the Ironclad, the Defiant, and the Harbinger. They kept flying. Warlord began to feel something he had not felt in decades: fear. These humans would not stop. They would not retreat. They just kept coming. "How close are they?" he demanded. 2 minutes from weapons range on our ship, Warlord." 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, the humans would be close enough to fire directly on his command vessel. Looked at the display showing the approaching ships. They were battered and burning and falling apart, but they were still coming. "All ships focus everything on those vessels," he screamed. "Stop them." The Defiant exploded under the concentrated fire. The Harbinger lost her engines and drifted helplessly, her crew still firing from dead in space. Only the Ironclad remained. "We are in range," announced. Stood at the center of the command deck. Her ship was dying around her. Half her crew was dead or wounded, but her eyes were calm and her voice was steady. "Fire everything," she ordered. The Ironclad released every weapon she had left. Missiles streamed toward the command ship. Plasma beams cut through its shields. The massive vessel shuddered under the assault. "Their shields are failing," reported. "One more hit." The command ship exploded. The blast was enormous. It tore through the nearby vessels, destroying 3 more in a chain reaction. Warlord died in an instant, his last thought one of pure disbelief. On the Ironclad, the crew watched the explosion in stunned silence. "We did it," whispered. "We actually did it." But there was no time for celebration. The surviving ships were in chaos. Some were retreating. Others were turning on each other, fighting for control. The reinforcement fleet that had just arrived hesitated, unsure of what to do. Captain opened a communication channel to all remaining vessels. "This is Captain Park of the human fleet," she said. Her voice carried across the battlefield. "Warlord is dead. Your command structure has been destroyed. You have 2 choices. Leave this system now or join your warlord in death. Decide quickly." The fleet hesitated. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the first ship turned and jumped to hyperspace. Another followed, then another. Within minutes, the remaining vessels were fleeing. The reinforcement fleet, seeing the chaos, chose not to engage. They retreated as well. The battle was over. On Sanctuary Prime, they watched the flee. At first, they did not understand what was happening. Then realization spread through the population like wildfire. They had won. Somehow, impossibly, they had won. Cheers erupted across the planet, embraced each other with tears streaming down their faces. In the refugee shelters, families reunited. In the observation center, Keeper fell to her knees and wept. Sergeant stood at the shelter entrance and watched the ground forces retreat. His soldiers were exhausted and wounded, but they were alive. He looked down at the young child still standing beside him. "It is over," he said gently. "You are safe now." The child reached up and took his massive hand in her small fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. Smiled. For the first time in days, the tension left his shoulders. You are welcome." On the ironclad, Doctor worked to save the wounded. There were so many, too many, but she refused to stop. Every life mattered. Every person was worth fighting for. Captain finally allowed herself a moment of rest. She sat in her command chair and looked out at the stars. Her ship was crippled. Her fleet was decimated. She had lost so many good people. But they were safe. 2 days later, the surviving human ships prepared to leave. Repairs had been made. The worst of the wounded had been stabilized. It was time to go home. Elder came aboard the ironclad to say goodbye. He walked slowly through the damaged corridors, seeing the scars of battle everywhere. When he reached the command deck, was waiting for him. "Captain Park," he said, his voice was thick with emotion. "I do not have words to express our gratitude. You sacrificed so much for us. People you never knew, a species you had never met." Smiled gently. "You called for help, that is reason enough." "Why?" asked. The question had haunted him since the humans first arrived. "Why would you do this? Why would you die for strangers?" Considered the question carefully. "Because we know what it means to be weak," she said finally. "Every species starts out helpless. We were prey once. We were hunted. We survived only because we learned to protect each other." She looked at him with warm eyes. "Now we are strong enough to protect others. That is not a burden. That is a gift." Was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect among his people. "They will never forget what you have done," he said. "Your people will always be welcome in our space. You are no longer strangers. You are friends." And stood nearby. They had grown close during the crisis. She had proven to be a quick learner and a brave soul. He had proven to be patient and kind. "Will you return?" asked him. Smiled. "Count on it. I still need to teach you poker. I will practice while you are gone. You will still lose." Laughed. It was a beautiful sound after so much pain. The human fleet departed that afternoon. The damaged ships limped toward the jump point, their crews weary but proud. They had lost good people. They had sacrificed more than anyone should have to give. But they had saved an entire civilization. On Sanctuary Prime, Keeper began writing a new chapter in the historical records. She wrote about the battle. She wrote about the sacrifice. She wrote about the humans who came from the other side of the galaxy to protect a species they had never met. She concluded with these words: "The ancient records described humans as monsters from a world of poison and violence. This description is accurate but incomplete. Humans are indeed creatures forged in fire and pain, but they did not let their harsh origins make them cruel. Instead, they became protectors. They became guardians. They became the species that answers when others call for help. We feared them when they arrived. We loved them when they left, and we will remember them forever." As the human ships vanished into the stars, Elder stood at the observation center window and watched them go. "Will they come back if we need them?" a young coordinator asked. Smiled. "If we ever need them, we only have to call." He looked at the empty sky and thought about what he had learned. The universe was vast and cold and full of danger, but somewhere out there in the darkness between stars, humans were watching, waiting, ready to answer when the helpless called for aid. That was what it meant to be not just the ability to survive anything, but the choice to protect everyone.